and the 2018-2019 budget for implementation of the China engagement strategy to cover both staff resourcing and program delivery.
And our final question tonight is also from Mr Brown. The 2014-15 federal budget introduced a 3-year indexation freeze on financial assistance grants. Is this believed to have impacted on City of Casey finances, and if so, can it be estimated how much this freeze would have effectively cost the City of Casey? This question will be answered by our CFO.
The Commonwealth's Financial Assistance Grant Program consists of 2 components. A general purpose component which is distributed between the states and territories according to population, and an identified local road component which is distributed between the states and territories according to fixed historical shares. Variations in the level of financial assistance grants are affected by a range of factors, including the Commonwealth budget decisions, Victoria Grants Commission allocations, and changes in demographic data such as population. It is not possible to reliably isolate the impact of the Commonwealth's 2014-15 budget decision to freeze indexation due to the variation in broader factors. However, the City of Casey's variance to budget in the 2015-16 year for financial assistance grant revenue was $0.3 million, which gives a broad indication of the lower than expected annual revenue in that financial year. The City of Casey has sustained its budget position within its available resources.
Through you, Madam Mayor, there are no further questions.
Thank you very much, Ms Frost, and thank you for the, to the officers for their responses. We'll move on to officers' reports. Are there any councillors who wish are there any items councillors wish to discuss? I'd like to start by withdrawing item 7.1, our quarterly community report. Are there any other items, councillors? Councillor Cristani.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 7.2 and 7.6.
Fantastic, thank you. Councillor Smith. Thank you. Any other reports? Councillor Rowe. Thank you very much. Any other reports, councillors? That being the case, is there a mover and seconder to adopt the recommendations listed in the officers' reports that have not been withdrawn for discussion? They are as follows: items 7.3, 7.4, 7.5, 7.7, 7.11, 7.12. Moved by Councillor Aziz, seconded by Councillor Gillich. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, that is carried. Officers' reports withdrawn for discussion. I'd like to first go to item 7.1. So I'd like to move that. And Councillor Saray is seconding it. Thank you, Councillor Saray. Councillors, I'm pleased to present the City of Casey's quarterly community report for January through to March 2019. The delivery of the Council Action Plan 2018-19 continued to track well, with only one action that will be unable to be delivered by 30th of June as planned. One highlight of the quarter was the NDIS Service Provider Exposition, which was held at Bunjil Place in March. The expo provided an opportunity for residents to ask questions about the NDIS and meet service providers, and was well received by attendees. A standout in this quarter's community engagement program was speaking to the Casey community about what mattered most to them to inform the development of the Council Action Plan 2019-2020. Council went to local markets, plant sales festivals, libraries and community centres, and spoke to almost 1,000 residents and visitors during the engagement, with a further 250 people engaging through the online survey. The community's feedback was used to help develop the Council Action Plan 2019-2020, which is available online on Casey's Conversations for the Community to provide feedback on until Thursday the 6th of June 2019. And I'd like to offer my personal thanks to my fellow councillors, to the great work of our council officers, and also to the great work of our community. The one thing that council can really be proud of is the engagement by the community. We've put out the invitation, they've accepted, and my goodness, they do come up with some wonderful feedback. Some of it's constructive and some of it's complimentary, but some of it is just pure visionary, and we're really grateful for it. So thank you very much to our council officers and to the community and my fellow councillors. Do we have any dissent on this? Any questions? No dissent? That being the case, That is carried. Moving on to item 7.2, Councillor Cristani.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to address this item tonight, request for speed limit reduction, Churchill Park Drive, Listerfield South.
So it's moved by Councillor Cristani, seconded by Councillor Gillich.
Okay, so I have actually submitted extra wording. These,
sorry, I didn't know
No,
that.
that's okay. Can I just get a leave of council
Yeah,
before I get a secretary?
we'll just have a look at the wording. Can you highlight what the change is, please, Councillor Cristani?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is, okay, so there is, Mr Griffin has actually submitted wording. I've only just...
Councillors, we'd just like to have a look at the wording.
sorry,
and
can I just, finish what I was saying, Madam Mayor, because before you look at the wording, I do have new wording that I'd submitted separately. I'd emailed to CSO. That's what I was reflecting, sorry. It's not much different to yours, Mr Griffin. Forgive me, I just took over because I wanted to highlight some individual points that were raised by residents over the last day or so. Thank you. So, yeah, that captures most of it, but...
Is that correct? That's correct wording?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Is it okay if I start to talk on it?
Oh,
or we
please.
do-
Yeah, councillors, what we're going to do is a little bit to front. We're just waiting for the correct wording to come up on the screen. If we could just listen to Councillor Cristani's debate, that would be
Thank you.
fantastic. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I want to address this issue. This is a response to a petition held by, captured by Shannon, who is in the gallery tonight. She's attended by her parents and by other resident Paul and Sue, who actually nurses injured kangaroos back to health. And so I really think this is an important issue for Listerfield South. I had the absolute honour of attending an Easter raffle just before Easter, and the money that was raised was fantastic. It was, I haven't actually captured how much you've raised there, but it was to assist in the nursing of these kangaroos and assisting them with that, with bringing them back to health. There's a lot of time and volunteer work that goes into assisting these kangaroos. But this is actually the high overarching issue is the fact that we have kangaroos that interact with the roads, but we have drivers that are not doing the right thing. We have drivers, I think, right across Casey, but in this particular area, it's more sensitive because there's an increased wildlife presence, and we find that this really shouldn't be occurring. There needs to be a reduction in speed. There needs to be people stop cutting corners, adhering to speed bumps that are already in place. But there needs to be increased attention to this area.
Sorry, Councillor Cristani,
sure.
just to let the councillors know, the correct wording is up in front of us
Thank you.
now.
I'll read it for the purpose of the online streaming, if that's okay, Madam Mayor, that speed limit review undertaken by officers for Churchill Park Drive be noted, that council officers further liaise with Vic Roads to determine if the existing speed limits are appropriate for Churchill Park Drive, that a meeting convene with representative residents to discuss further items including warning signage, report input from call-out officers for injured kangaroos and positioning of flashing lights, that a further report be provided to council upon completion of discussions with representative residents and Vic Roads. May I get a leave of council, Madam Mayor, to just insert and officers? I think the intent is already there, but in item 4...
We haven't actually got leave of council for this lot here, so how does that work? Could I get some advice on that? Because we haven't got leave of council to accept this.
Perhaps I can make an amendment on that and then ask for leave of council.
That's what I want to get advice on. Thanks, Councillor
okay.
Cristani. Is that okay? Yep, okay. Make your amendment, please.
It's on item 4 to insert with after representative residents, comma, call out officers, and that's it. Call out officers. Thanks.
So could I ask for leave of council, please, councillors? Somebody?
Great.
Somebody?
Yes.
Oh, thank you,
Oh, good.
Councillor Ziz, yeah.
Thank you very much, councillors. And Vic Roads, that the head signatory of the petition be advised of this outcome at this time. So, Madam Mayor and fellow councillors, this needs a bit more attention. I do respect the officers in their report, and I think the intent was to save lives, but the original intent was to focus on the kangaroos and to save lives, of course. The kangaroos are constantly getting injured. They are the numbers are increasing, and we need to do more about it as our population increases. The Listerfield South community are particularly concerned about this issue. And so it is my issue too. If they're concerned, I'm concerned. And we are very humane here. We're very conscientious of looking after our animal welfare. And so it should extend to our wildlife too. And so I hope that you can capture the concern I have. I really hope that we can adjust our report for the Black Spot program to reflect residents' concerns, but I won't preempt that until we've had the discussions. Mr Griffin, do you want to add anything to what I've said, or do you want to have
Through the Mayor?
Sorry, through the Mayor.
Mr Griffin, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, we can implement that resolution as proposed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll leave it there. But thanks so much. I want to pay tribute to the gallery, to residents today. Shannon, thank you particularly yourself, and Sue, for all you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cristani. Councillors, that recommendation is before us. Is there any dissent or any questions? That being the case, that is carried, and congratulations. Beautiful work. Thank you, Councillor Cristani. Moving on to item 7.8, Councillor Smith. Oh, 7.6, sorry, Councillor Cristani.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I
Going early.
rise for item 7.6 in relation to Special Charge Scheme Reservoir Road, Narre Warren North. And I will read this out because it is adjusted wording.
We're adjusting the wording, are we?
No, I'll just ask
So
for
moved
a
by
seconder.
Councillor Cristani, seconded by Councillor Gillich.
Thank you.
And we're reading it out because...
For the purpose of the live stream, because
But
I've
that-
adjusted the original report.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you. That council notes a majority of property owners do not support the proposed special charge scheme for the construction of Reservoir Road, Narre Warren North. The council resolves not to proceed with a proposed special charge scheme for the construction of Reservoir Road, Narre Warren North. That all property owners within the proposed scheme be advised of council's decision, and the additional dot point that I've added, and I'd like to have your support tonight, that noting the current review underway of the Casey Special Charge Scheme policy, requests that when the report returns to council, the issue be addressed of the non-contribution or exemption of non-rateable properties, and how that increases the burden of contribution on other residents, specifically on no-through roads. That the report consider advocacy avenues to assist with non-rateable property contribution to offset cost. It's a long-winded way to explain, but I'll just give a quick note on this. So basically what I'm trying to address in this long run-on sentence is that we have an example here in Reservoir Road. We have a place of worship, or it could be Melbourne Water, it could be another non-rateable property. They don't pay rates, therefore they don't contribute to a ceiling of a road. That actually redistributes their cost onto other residents. That is a real sticking point for Reservoir Road, and I think, to be fair, and I would fully agree if I was in their shoes, it's just not fair. I understand that there is wider benefit for place of worship and Melbourne Water, but just put yourself in the residents' shoes. Should they have to wear the cost of a state issue, or should they have to wear the cost of another property on their road? And furthermore, perhaps we consider, if we can't get further advocacy funding from elsewhere, whether or not we should even allow building of such areas, such properties on unsealed road if we know that they can't contribute to road seal programs. Look, that's another issue for another day, but I think that it should be captured in the report when it returns. The no-through road, already they have to bear 100% of the cost. And so that, I rarely have seen one get through. There's a number of items, and that a number of places where no-through roads do not get sealed. We already have increasing challenges on agreeing all the residents, or a majority, just to get a no-through road sealed under a special charge scheme. I know that that's why the report is getting reviewed, the policy rather, and coming back to council. But there is other issues here. Maybe it's time that we advocate for those properties to contribute, or at least to get funding to offset. So I'd love to have your support in this. It's really not changing the spirit of this. But can I just address one more, Madam Mayor, before I sit down, and that is the residents have, as you see in the report, 6 said no, 1 said yes, and that automatically strikes it out. They have to agree, I believe, 100% on a no-through road. They bear 100% of the cost. So in that, I honour the feedback. Perhaps would I have started on this track before, had I known the result? No. I wouldn't have wasted everyone's time and stressed residents. I had people ringing me saying, you know, almost in tears, that they felt that this was going to be forced upon them. I never want the community to think that I'm not listening to them. I only ever want to help. And almost all of the time, we actually respond to petitions. We respond to requests from the community to have a road sealed. We're just at a Mexican three-way at the moment, and we really need to address this and look at other avenues. So I hope we can have your support, guys. Thank you.
Great advocacy. Thank you, Councillor Cristani. Councillors, are there any questions? Is there any dissent? That being the case, sorry, have you got your hand up, Councillor Flannery? No. That being the case, that is carried. Thank you, Councillor Cristani. Moving on to item 7.8, Councillor Smith.
Madam Mayor, it's a lengthy report, so we won't go through it. I know councillors would have been...
Would you like to move it?
Yeah, I will. I'll get around to that. Yes, I'd like to move it, Madam Mayor.
Okay, and seconded by Councillor Rowe.
I commend the report to councillors. I'm very proud to be on the library board and have been for, I don't know, over 20 years. So it's a passion for me. In going against a lot of trends with libraries all over Australia, we are going against the trend of people still borrowing books, still turning up at libraries. Our attendance at all our branches, but particularly Bunjil, has been way above expectation and continues to be so. And you don't have to... so if you spend a little bit of time in Bunjil Library and you get a chance to talk to anyone, users, young and old, they love the place, and it's a very welcoming and friendly atmosphere. So I'm very pleased to move the delegate report. In our meeting in April, the board endorsed 3 strategic documents that you have in your agenda tonight, and that's the library plan, the strategic resources plan, and the library budget. So the strategic plan is developed in consultation with the library staff, board members and the community, and acknowledges the need for more libraries across our region to meet the demands of increased population, arrival of new migrant groups, more young families, and an ageing population with increased life expectancy. The Library Corporation, we recognise the challenges of securing support and funding. The draft budget talks about, it was endorsed by the board after lots of consideration, comments and workshops between the board and the CCL staff and key stakeholders from the various member councils. And the draft version was presented to the board in November last year, and I'm very pleased to say that the request for nearly $6.2 million has been put to Casey Council, and it is in our draft budget. So we're very pleased with that, and I commend this report. I didn't talk about the libraries plan, but it talks about how we're going to move forward, the way that we connect with our community, our strategic goals and key performance measures. So, councillors, I commend the budget, and I also congratulate the team at the Casey Canadian Libraries under the leadership of our CEO, Chris, and all the senior staff and all the staff at this Casey Library who do us proud.
They do indeed. Councillors, are there any questions? Is there any dissent? Before I carry that, I just wanted to mention tomorrow is Words to the Effect of International Book Reading Day, where everywhere they read the same book, certainly throughout Australia. And the name of the book is Alpacas with Maracas.
And I'll be reading it at the hospital.
Fantastic. Good on you, Councillor Smith. He was already across it. So a little bit of fun, and that's the beauty of libraries. All right, councillors, that being the case, that is carried. Thank you very much. We're now going to move on to item 7.9, Cranbourne Turf Club. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation in my name.
And I'd like to second that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and having moved this recommendation in my name, I do so in the absence of Councillor Jeff Ablett. And Councillor Ablett has done a sterling job working with the Cranbourne Turf Club for over a decade, and been a representative on the Reserve Committee and as well, and an avid participant in horse racing. and other sporting matters. And as I said, Councillor Aziz has done a sterling job, and one of the things that has come out of this, and
Councillor Ablett, I've done nothing. Councillor Ablett.
sorry,
I just said Councillor Aziz.
oh sorry,
I've done nothing.
We knew what you meant.
you knew I meant, yeah. He's on my mind, just making sure he's still there.
So cool.
That's all right. Now, getting back to it, Councillor Ablett's efforts in this, in negotiating with councillors and council officers and the Turf Club, and it's for council to contribute financially towards the development of a function centre at the Cranbourne Turf Club. Ever since I was a councillor back in 1988 in Cranbourne, and then for the 10 years as the Member of Parliament for Cranbourne, this has always been an issue of going to deb balls and other school functions in halls that weren't big enough locally, so people had to seek accommodation elsewhere. And I've gone as far and as wide as Knox and Springvale and Springvale Town Hall. That was also when I was younger. But Springvale Town Hall, because we didn't have a sufficiently large facility here in Cranbourne, or Casey and Cranbourne, to accommodate those events. And you know, to the Turf Club's credit, they've maintained this as being part of their development of the racetrack, to have a convention centre capable of attracting large conventions, but also, more importantly, to house community functions such as deb balls and other social events. The Turf Club have sought a loan from the state government to assist in the construction of this, and part of the integral part of the application was that they, I think, get some funding from the City of Casey to go towards this. The amount of money that the council will be contributing is $2 million. And councillors will recall that my insistence last year, when we were looking to contribute towards a sporting operation, being Team 11, the A-League soccer, that I insisted that we get a viable return on our investment and have the ability to either get the money back in kind or get the money back in hand. And through Jeff's efforts and that of Mr. Fitchett and his team, we've been able to negotiate a significant arrangement whereby community groups will benefit at no cost to the use of the facility and other facilities at the racetrack, that the City of Casey will be able to hold functions there at a very significant discount, and to generally make it available to attract other communities to come to Cranbourne and City of Casey to conduct it. I don't have much more to add apart from, again, thank Jeff for his efforts, wish him well in his recovery, and hopefully he'll get back on the horse, if you'll pardon the pun, very shortly, and be able to look to turn the first sod when all the documents have been signed and we've received a written confirmation contract from the Turf Club. I commend the item to the councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Are there any questions? Councillor Flannery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is just an aware. This is a win-win for Casey Council, it's a win-win for the Cranbourne Turf Club, and it's a win-win for the community. One thing that we specify here in council is jobs for the people of the City of Casey. We don't want people to travel. Absolutely fantastic that we've all come together and we got together and we've supported this great idea. Also, you know, a lot of the schools travel outside of the City of Casey for their school debs. They'll be able to do it without travelling, and I absolutely commend everybody on council and all the officers for putting the report together. And I also like to thank Neil Bainbridge and his committee and his board for a job well done. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, councillors? I've got an Are You Aware, and it's really to support what Councillor Rowe and Councillor Flannery have said. Neil Bainbridge is a visionary. He's come up with something absolutely wonderful here, something so desperately needed for our community. It does provide jobs, but it also boosts our economy. But I think about events such as what we hold at the City of Casey. Our Australia Day Award events are often limited to the number of people who can attend because of the size of the venue. Certainly that was the case back at the old council offices. You can imagine a place like the event centre at the Cranbourne Turf Club will then mean that wonderful people who have been nominated by their community for a Citizen of the Year award will be able to invite so many more family members and friends. I think that's, and because of the discounted rate that might be offered to us, then that would be very affordable but very meaningful for those that have been nominated by their peers. So they're the kinds of things that I think of, and I just can't wait to see the great events. It really will attract the big events out to Cranbourne, and it's a place that we're very proud of, and very proud of Neil Bainbridge and the Cranbourne Turf Club. Councillor Cristani.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I thought it was important that I raise and reflect what has already been said. I think it's important because Councillor Ablett has worked on this project for as long as I've been a councillor. So I just thought it was important that I support yourself and other colleagues in saying what you've already said about Councillor Ablett's efforts, and that is that he should be commended on initiating and seeing it through, and for the colleagues to look at ensuring that this came to fruition. So Councillor Ablett should be commended, and everyone else who's worked on it. Thank you.
I think I'd like to commend all the councillors because we got right behind it, and the officers have done such a fabulous job. And I know Mr Patterson made the effort to go out there a couple of weeks ago with Councillor Ablett for a meeting to discuss a way forward, and here we have it. So I do put this to my fellow councillors. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, that is carried. We now move on to item 7.10, Casey Radio.
Madam Mayor, I'll move the recommendation.
I'd like to second that too, thanks.
Madam Mayor, you and I have had a long association with Casey Radio, having both been presenters over the years. I have very fond memories of my time on air there. The listeners may not have had that fond memory, but anyway. Councillor Stableton, you've been on there for probably a lot longer than I had, 7 years. Well done. Can I acknowledge in the gallery tonight we have Nia McMartin, who's the president of Casey Radio, and Bill McMartin, who is the technical guru there, and OBs. Hear the football broadcasts. It's going to air because Bill's there making sure it does. So congratulations to them. I think Casey Radio, if people who have followed the ups and downs of Casey Radio over the years will be aware that it went through some pretty lean times where there was some poor decisions in management and poor management skills being employed by the people who were there. Those days, I think, are well and truly behind the station. New committee management, new leadership with Nia at the helm, and I'm very glad I was able to advocate for the radio station not to lose its funding altogether. Council and Council Stapleton will have been supported by councillors in making sure that money, whilst it wasn't handed over freely, but it was kept there in abeyance to give Casey Radio a chance to get back on an even keel, and it certainly has. And whilst I was concerned to see that there's only $20,000 being handed over, I was very pleased to see that was all it was asked for. So that's it's an organisation that could have asked for more. It didn't. It wasn't greedy. It's taken and asked for what it needed. And I'm also pleased to find out that the money is still there in abeyance, so that when the need comes up for that money, it will be there. So congratulations to the board of Casey Radio. They are a great asset, and we probably don't use them enough as we should, but I can assure the Nia and the team at Casey Radio we are very proud of them, and I'm particularly pleased that council chose to stick by the station and to where it's heading for even bigger and better things. But thank you and Bill for your involvement and your support for community radio, which is a fantastic thing.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Are there any questions from councillors? Could I just say, are you aware, councillors, that when we first came into council, certainly Councillor Aziz and myself, Councillor Smith was here, the radio station was in very poor shape. Councillor Ablett was very instrumental in getting that back on track. He did a great job with that. That's when he actually offered me a program and got a radio program going. I think yours was the most fun, though, I have to say, Councillor Smith. But and then the unfortunate thing happened, and of course then we've got Nia and Bill and their committee that have stepped in, that are doing an exemplary job, and I really wish to acknowledge them tonight and to thank them for the work that they've done. You know, I've said this to Nia, we're absolutely thrilled with the way things are headed, and it's being done absolutely properly, adhering to governance, great fiscal management, and really, really hard work. They work so hard. So could I offer my congratulations and thanks, and put this to my fellow councillors. Oh, Councillor Smith, you want to say something else?
I should have just said, to point out that it is a completely volunteer-run station, and that hasn't always been the case. I think over the years there have been times when there were salaries and stipends and things paid that were probably a bit over the top and not deserved, but thanks to Nia and the team, the station is running very lean. It's a very lean machine and doing really well, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, that is carried. Consideration of reports of committees. Is there a mover and a seconder to receive and note the record of Assembly of Councillors as listed? Councillors? Somebody? Anyone? Councillor Flannery and Councillor Gillage. So moved by Councillor Flannery, seconded by Councillor Gillage. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, that is carried. Petitions. Councillors, are there any petitions or joint letters that you wish to present? No, there being none. We'll move on to notices of motion. We've got one notice of motion, 3254. Councillor Smith.
I'll move it as read.
Second, so moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Aziz.
Councillors, I'll just bring this up because it came. I'm very embarrassed that I didn't pick this up when it came to council the first time. But thanks to some information that the officers were able to provide, and I was able to ascertain that what we had originally proposed, we were offering the opportunity for some performers to go to China at the invitation of China, remembering that some of the costs, once we are part of the International Music Festival that we're going over for, are being paid by the Chinese government or the Chengdu government. There were certain parts that we would have to cover. And I realised that we were offering the performers a chance to go to China, which is a fantastic opportunity. We were going to pay for their airfare, and that was it. We weren't offering them anything else. We were expecting them to organise and pay for their own visa. Anything extra that they wanted to do would have to be covered. Then I realised there's no time to do anything extra. We were expecting these people to fly in, basically perform and fly out. And not even a professional performer probably would be expected to do that. We were asking non-professional performers, who are very talented, by the way, and probably will one day be professional, to go all that way, perform, and then come straight home and help pay for the privilege of doing that. And I thought that was very unfair and was just not reasonable. So what I've proposed, and we've come up with a plan, is to get the performers there a day or two earlier, so there's an opportunity for them to have a look around locally. They won't be able to go to the big attractions like the Wall and those sorts of places, but they'll be able to have a look around Chengdu and nearby. But also give them a bit of time to acclimatise and familiarise themselves with simply being in a foreign country. So that's the reason the extra funding is needed. I believe it's only fair. Whilst we were, as I said, we were going to pay the airfare, that was it. The other thing I was disappointed in, and as I've found out, and this will fix it up, is that we were expecting them to organise and pay for their own visas. And again, they were going to be paying for their visas to go and travel all that way to perform for our benefit as well as their own personal benefit. And I felt that was very unfair. So the extra allocation will cover for us to organise and fund the visas.
Thank you very much, Councillor
I
Smith.
should have added, Madam Mayor, that the two performers were going to be here tonight to perform. We had actually asked them to come, but one of them is quite ill, so we'll arrange that for a meeting in the future for them to come. And if you, I doesn't mention Sunita Trahar and or Treher and Matt Prins are the two performers. They're well known to many of us here in council. They've been performers here for a long, long time. They went through a very robust process of applying and being considered by a selection panel. They weren't the only ones. There were a lot of people who were disappointed, but hopefully we'll have a go in future years if we get re-invited back.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. We do wish Matt a speedy recovery. Are there any questions? Question, Councillor Cristani? Dissent?
I reserve my right. Thanks, Madam Mayor. There's a
Okay,
dissent.
thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Flannery.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, this is just an aware. Everybody knows that in council that I've never supported overseas travel, but I give exception to this because they're two young, talented artists that are from the city of Casey, and I think that the young people should be supported to go over there and perform on not only on for Casey's behalf, but on Victoria, Australia's behalf, and to represent the city of Casey. So in this case, I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Any other questions? Is there any further dissent? Did you want to speak to your dissent, Councillor Cristani? Okay, I'll put this to the vote. Those in favour of this notice of motion? That is carried. Oh, sorry, I should have said those against. Beg your pardon, sorry. Those against? Are you abstaining? You're for it? Sorry. Okay. Fantastic, thank you. That is carried. Moving on to urgent business. Are there any items of urgent business? Councillor Aziz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I call for an item of urgent business on the basis that it is a matter that concerns community safety, and that's why it's urgent.
Great.
So I move that it's urgent on the basis of that.
So moved by Councillor Aziz, seconded by Councillor Flannery. Is there any dissent? There being no dissent, that is carried. And we'll just give councillors time to read the... Right, if we could get that, can we make it a bit bigger? Hardly read it. Would you like to read it out for us? Oh, here we go. That's a bit better. Yep. Councillors, this is before us.
Did you want that read out, Madam Mayor?
Oh, I think we're good now. I think we can read it. Is that okay with you? I think everyone can read it, can they?
I can't read it. That's fine.
So I'll read it for you. That's okay. Thank you, Councillor Smith. Now, it's moved by Councillor Smith and it'll be seconded by Councillor Flannery.
No, it's moved by
Sorry.
me.
He's copying it tonight.
Have you... I'm so sorry. Moved by Councillor Aziz.
I'd like to move the substantive motion, not
Yes.
the urgent business motion, because I think the urgent business one's been dealt with.
So how about we move the substantive note?
I'd like to move the substantive one, and I wonder if...
I'm agreeable to that. No, I'll
colleague
do that.
to
Thank you,
second it.
Councillor Aziz. Thank you, Councillor Flannery. So, please, introduce.
So look, I'll be very quick. I think it's a fairly self-explanatory matter, but I've been contacted by a number of residents in relation to the dangerous conditions which now exist on this particular road. And these conditions are compounded by the fact that Glassix Road is undeveloped and that Robbinswood Parade is actually used as a thoroughfare for many residents in an area in the city of Casey that is growing at a rate of knots, obviously with the growth in Cranbourne North as well as the growth in Clyde North, and the close proximity of those two areas to Narre Warren South. That particular stretch of road is being used as a thoroughfare on a daily basis, and that is compounding the congestion problems and is creating speeding problems as well as a whole range of other compliance issues. So I became aware of this matter on Sunday night, and by Monday morning I had written to our very trusted and very capable Chief of Staff to ensure that there is a multidisciplinary team that handles all the issues that are emerging on this road, be it a traffic calming solution or an enforcement solution or even a police compliance solution, and of course a parking solution which may require some redesign and other options to be presented to council. But the problems are very real, Madam Mayor, and they need to be dealt with expeditiously, because they will only continue to compound as the population in our city grows. So, and until we're able to acquire that critical part of Blasics Road, which forms part of a bigger puzzle to create a better thoroughfare in our city, Robbinswood Parade is going to be a problem, and I don't think it's fair on those residents. And so I look forward to the outcome and the resolutions that may come as a result of this resolution, should that be passed by council. But it's important when these matters arise that they're brought to the chamber. This is the people's chamber. People vote for us to be here and to advocate for the issues that they're concerned about in their daily lives, and there is nothing more important than those safety issues that emerge from time to time as a result of our growth.
Couldn't agree more, Councillor Aziz. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Is there any dissent? That is carried. Can I please get a mover and seconder to move that council resolves itself into closed council and resume after a 5-minute adjournment? Councillor Gillich moved, seconded by Councillor Rowe. Is there any dissent? I didn't think so. That is carried. Thank you, councillors. A great meeting. Thank you very much to those of you who remain in the gallery and to those watching live stream. And good night.